Welcome to Behind the Wines, a freshly bottled podcast about Australian wine, the wines we love, and the people behind them. My mission is simple. I want to get down into the cellar with sommeliers, stomp some grapes with winemakers, and have chats with our finest critics, growers, retailers, and chefs.
And a big welcome back to Series 2 of Behind the Wines. It's fantastic to be back, bringing you more stories, insights, and conversations from the people shaping the world of wine in Australia. But before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible. A big thank you to PS Wine Selections and Pierre's latest venture, Leroy in Brighton, Mark from NBS Productions, who sorts me out for all my digital media needs, and Prue from Ography Design Consultancy, who helps ensures everything looks so sharp for every episode on every platform. Thanks guys, you're all amazing.
So today we're joined by Brenden Robnik, aka The Wine Animal. And man, this guy can talk. And he loves nothing more than talk about all things wine. So whether you're looking for your next great wine experience or your next great bottle, The Wine Animal is all about connecting people with amazing experiences washed down with exceptional wine. Welcome to Behind the Wines, Brenden.
Thank you for having me. Very excited. I love talking.
Great. Our audience clearly likes listening to people. So, Brenden, tell us about Wine Animal and what's that look like?
Okay, so Wine Animal is an extension of my personality because I'm a little bit of an animal. It is formed on a basis of bringing people into wine. So it is, at its essence, it is eventing and event hosting, event curation, and events as an experience. It is tours and getting people out into the regions, whether that's the Yarra Valley, whether it's, I went down to Tasmania and took a tour group around Tasmania. It is retail, obviously through my website and promotion of wines from all over the country and all over the world. It is private seller curation and private seller sales. That's sort of one of my side businesses that's not really, out there in the public. And it is social media and content creation, not to get Insta famous or to get 1 million followers, but to ensure that the followers that I have are in the industry or have a real connection to food and wine.
How did the idea first come about?
Well, for those that know my past, I was a tragic gambler for a long time, for 13 years actually. And when my wife exposed all of that and I had to make a decision to change my life or to not change my life, I needed something to fill in all those hours where I would have been sitting in front of a slot machine playing pokies. I always liked wine and had an interest in wine, but not at that level. And the real short, long story version is my mum and my sister went to New York, found a rosé that they loved and wanted me to find it in Australia because I loved rosé. Like rosé was my drink. And I then went down a rabbit hole and started importing Hampton water, which is from John Bon Jovi and Jesse Bon Jovi, and Gerard Bertrand from Languedoc in France. I don't even know if I pronounced that right, but that's okay. And within 4 days, I had 4 bottles turn up on my doorstep from a crazy French dude in Vietnam. And then 2 months later, in the worst financial ruin I was ever in, and my marriage was on teetering, we invested, the best part of $30,000 that we didn't have in 4 pallets of rosé, with no idea how to sell it, no idea how to distribute it, no idea what the rules were, nothing. So you can imagine I'm, more than $250,000 in bad debt. Marriage is on the rocks. I'm spending $1,000 a week on counselling, psychology, psychiatry, therapy. I wonder if my wife is going to stay with me. I'm trying to run another business, a building business with my business partner, and trying not to impact his life, and then work out how to sell 2,400 bottles of wine, which I've never done before. That's really the long story. And then that's how it all started. Then we had COVID, which sort of changed the way that people were buying and selling. In the meantime, all those bottles landed, and then I got a $25,000 bill from the government to pay wet tax, import tax, more tax, tax on tax, some more tax on tax on tax on tax, just to get the bottles out. So then I had to borrow more money to get the wine out of the container, which I didn't know at the time. And then I had to start selling it. And you can imagine walking around in stubby shorts or high vis with 2 bottles of pink rosé, like how that goes down. But surprisingly, it worked. And having a John Bon Jovi fan base in Australia was really good. They invested a lot of money in the brand. And it was a $45 bottle of rosé. Don't forget, in 2020, that's a lot of money for rosé. And we were doing really, really well. I had like Instagram live feeds with Jesse Bon Jovi. We were playing like virtual beer pong during COVID. And then his dad mentioned my business and my name, which was just Robnik Group at the time, because I was nothing really, on Instagram. And my website went like troppo, like 200 and something orders in 2 hours. I was like, I'd never even imagined. I was like, this was retail too, not wholesale. I'm like, this is even better. And wholesale was hard. People weren't buying anything that they didn't know. They were just stocking lines that were selling. Like you couldn't go out and meet people either to try and sell the wine. And then whether it's luck for me or it's not luck, like one of the large corporates swooped in and stole it from me, I guess is the right way to put it. That's really what happened. And I'd spent 14 months selling what was then 7,000 bottles of rosé, which I think is a pretty intense effort for a tradie, on my own. I mean, my wife helped a lot, but like I was the one selling it. I was doing festivals, markets. I was going interstate. I was air freighting cases over when I needed it desperately, and just to keep the stock up. I was using the marketing assets and the Bon Jovi link really well. We were building a really good brand, and then the big guns came in. They take it because they've got an existing relationship. I had a contract in inverted commas, but that didn't mean shit really. And then it turned up in the big green supermarket shelves for $10 or $12 less than what we were selling it for. And then my main issue became the retailers who I'd given exclusive rights to this wine, because I didn't sell in any chains, coming at me saying, you're a sellout. You sold out to the supermarkets because times are hard. I'm like, I didn't even know it was there. I had no idea it was coming. So then, there's meetings and, meeting with the boss of the boss of the boss, corporates and, all Zoom meetings, obviously, because they're all overseas. And then we came to we didn't come to an arrangement. They offered me an agreement, basically, and was just like, and then the brand was done too, though, which is the real issue, because the brand is a huge hit in America and in Europe. It's gigantic. And here, unfortunately, the brand has just plateaued off a cliff. It's still, they're 2 vintages behind. It'll be cleared and dispersed off the shelf soon enough. I'm very sure of it. It's sad because it's a great wine. It's a great story. We gave away like signed Bon Jovi guitar. We did like some really, really fun stuff. And that was a really long-winded way of that. But that's sort of how it started.
So that really, really niche market.
Really niche market, but it was expanding. Like rosé was getting more popular. The back end of 2020, when Melbourne was sort of coming out of all of that, people were like wanting to go out. They wanted to drink. Summer, like we had warmth. We had some form of what we call freedom, I guess. And it was working. I was interstate. I went to Sydney for a rosé festival in Rose Bay, right? Like a perfect festival. It was awesome. The wine was so well received. I'm really passionate about it too. And I don't mind putting myself out there and, being the face of something. And all that really happened and what I learned from that was that the wholesale game is tough. It's a really tight market. You're trying to sell products that people haven't heard of, that are for what is rosé to be, a landed unit at, $25+ a bottle. Like it's expensive when there's local stuff that's better, just as good, well known and received, way cheaper.
So you kind of roll it like in gambling parlance, you put it all on red, came up, but now then the big guys came in and stopped you. So then
the house won. The house won always.
So how'd you pick yourself up again?
What I've always been good at is people and hospitality. I was a waiter and I was in hospitality from when I was a kid. I wanted to be a chef for a very long time until I worked at a very famous restaurant in St Kilda and realised that being a chef would be a very tough job. I'd prefer to be front of house. I love people. I love building relationships. I think that hospitality, in essence, even now in our digital world, is still about a face-to-face and a handshake agreement. I think there's still so much merit in that. So my focus shifted from wholesale and that to, hey, I'm actually quite good at building relationships and showcasing things, and retail seemed to be a little bit more of a margin almost per se as well. So if I could find things for people and be very resourceful, then maybe that's the path to venture down. And that's sort of where that kicked off. And I started focusing on, procurement of wines that people couldn't get, or, just a little bit of a different business model to most of the retail stuff.
Other than retail, what kind of gap did you see in the market that made you think there's an opportunity to do something different?
Events, spending money. So back then, obviously I had no money, literally, I had negative money for a very long time. The gap I found was that I didn't want to go and spend $200 on a bottle of wine, but I would happily contribute to get a glass of wine. If there was 10 of us, that's $20 each, and you get 75 mils, that's still a good amount of a good wine. And people wanted to go out and have socialness. There was all these forums and there was groups. And by then my Instagram, which was the fun wine guy back then, had started to just sort of take off just a little bit. And I had a few followers, and then the Facebook groups were, people were just frothing to want to get out. So I thought, well, what if we got 10 people together and we all chipped in $200, and then we used that $2,000 to buy 10 bottles of wine. And because I was accessing them wholesale, or I was accessing them from private collectors and things, it was like we could drink wines that were worth $2,500 or $3,000 for $2,000. And I was like, I get paid to do this and try the wines and learn and experience and meet fellow people. That was where I felt the gap existed the most. And that was when the event side of things started. That was when, I was still the fun wine guy then, but I think that's sort of when the shift went to the wine animal change.
And so wine tourism has evolved significantly over the years. What are visitors looking for today?
I still believe that the biggest thing is storytelling and people hearing it from the people directly involved, which is really hard, right? As a winemaker, say, to be making the wine, doing everything to run it, and then to be front of house and be the face. I find that probably near impossible for a lot. But my view is that people want an experience more so than the wine itself. Because what you remember is the people you were with, the experience you had. The stories that Jane, working behind the bar, who's been there for 20 years, was telling you stories, having a great experience. It goes back to, it's not a material thing you want. You want the emotional and the physical experience rather than the physical, like the bottle itself. That's what I still think people crave it more now than they ever have.
I can kind of relate to that in terms of the experience, because I used to sell wine early on when I was at university, and I remember I had this great wine. I think it was like a Sassikai, and this guy came out and goes, I've got a special date and I'm taking her out and I really want to spend a lot of money. Back then it was sort of like $300. This is like 30 years ago, showing my age. And he came back into the store and he said, oh, this wine's no good. I go, what? And he said, I said, was it corked? He goes, no, it just wasn't as good what you told me. And I said, well, what happened? He goes, well, first of all, it was raining and I got there late and I got in there and she was in a bad mood. And there was the whole bit about the experience and the wine. And I said, you know what? I said, buy another one. And if you don't like it, I'll pay for both. And he said, okay. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, he came back. He said, oh my God.
Yeah, incredible.
That was the best wine.
Yeah.
But then he told about his experience. The sun was perfect. The way that the food was all perfect because he took it to BYO that I suggested. And yeah, it's the experience, right?
Always.
Wine is so kind of similar in nature. It's hard to differentiate, but people do understand this.
Because it's a commodity, right? It's an investment. It's a commodity, it's a party starter. It wears so many hats. And I get asked, I can't even tell you how many times, what's the best bottle of wine you've had? What's your favourite bottle of wine, right? A lot of people would have really easy, quick answers, like the bottle of DRC I drank, or this bottle or that. But generally the best bottles of wine that I have are very different from the favourite bottles of wine that I've had. And the favourite ones are always the ones I remember the experience, who I was with, what it involved, where I was, the meaning of the bottle too. Like the bottle I drank at the end of 2021, it would have been the end of 2021, when I went out with a close group of friends to celebrate selling what was then my second house that I'd had to sell, in order to get back to what was a net zero financial thing. So it was 3 years after the gambling. like the exposure. And I went out for dinner and I brought a bottle. It was the first ever birth year bottle of wine that I'd drunk. And it was not the best bottle of wine I've ever had by any means. But it was probably my favorite bottle because the representation of that bottle and what it meant with the people I shared it with meant more than anything else. And I think that most people, if they're really, truly honest with themselves, when they're asked that question, it's about the experience you had with that bottle rather than sitting at home drinking the most expensive bottle of wine you have, which they're still enjoyable. I do that a lot and really enjoy it. It's nice not to share. But to me, it's always about sharing.
I agree. Sometimes you look at your cellar collection, you say, oh, I need to share that with someone.
Yeah, so I have been very fortunate that there's probably 50 bottles that I own that I would never sell. But everything else for me is like, if you reached out to me and said, I really need this bottle and I happen to have one, like at the end of the day, I wrote on like chalk on my fridge, Bass Phillip bin 17K, do not drink, or hold this, that, because I thought that I would never get the chance to experience these wines going on. And then now it's sort of like, yeah, okay, I might only have one of these, but the likelihood of me being able to try it at some time down the future, or at the end of the day, it's just a bottle of wine. Like really, it's just, unless it has a sentimental reason for me, it's just everything's up for grabs because I think that, and that's why that's with my events. That's why I open bottles and people are like, oh, like I can't believe you're sharing that. I'm like, why? Isn't that the whole idea? Like that's been lost upon the generation of Burgundy boom and whatever you want to call it, where prices have just, gone extraordinary. They are just an investment now. You can't just buy it and drink it, but why can't you? Like that's the beauty of it.
You often talk about creating experiences, which we've been talking about, rather than simply visits. What's the difference?
I think there is always a need for events where winemakers, producers, importers will stand up and give you technical details and technical data and winemaking notes, vintage variations, that because it's educational, right? Like that's like an educational aspect of what wine is. But there is such a need for events where the information is there if you want it and you can give it, but you want the people that are there at the event to meet new people and experience new people. When I started, I did Melbourne. Then I ventured and did one in Sydney. Then I was like, oh, that was really great. And then I had somebody in Perth reach out saying, I want you to come and do something in Perth, a very famous wine critic. And I was like, yeah, I'll come across and then let's do an event there. And then I realized that there's another group of wine people that all love wine but have never met before. So now in each city, there is these groups and these cliques that have formed that have met through one of my events where, yes, I talk a little bit, but I'll always say, I'm not going to stand up here and give you all the information. If you want it, it's in the booklet. If you want to know something specific, ask me and I'll give you that information. Because it's not that I don't respect or don't think that you need to go up and give all the technical information. I do, and I greatly respect it all. But that for me is an educational event. I'm trying to give more of not a party vibe is not the right word, but just more of a relaxed, casual atmosphere and to bring people in who are fearing going to those type of events. Because there's a lot of people that message me like, I thought I would feel out of place. I didn't. Thank you for being inclusive. Thank you for allowing me to come. And I'm like, I didn't allow you to come. You bought a ticket. Like I'm not vetting people and saying yes, no, because that defeats the purpose of saying that you're all inclusive and that you want to, there's everyone I want to break the stigma around the wine wanker and there's a stigma. Well, it's not, because what that is education and career advancement for people, right? There is just another side of that which people need to be exposed to, which I think is being done much better now, but it wasn't when I had those initial ideas, in my opinion.
Sounds like you're more like making an environment to have a bigger pool of people who...
Correct. And when I started, it was like bring people in, bridge the gap between new and the new wine drinker and the experienced wine drinkers, like bridge the gap so they can come together. Because what I found was that there's so many young people that drink wine. There's so many old people that drink wine. There's everybody in between. But everybody's at such varying levels of like excitement and education. And some don't want the education. Some do. Some don't want to speak in public and be asked a question. Some love it. Some, there is people that come and they will give you their opinion, and it's, if it's not their opinion, then it's not correct. And you need to be able to, in an environment, in a group situation, be able to control that as well so that everybody feels comfortable, which is difficult too with large groups. Find that I have a good ability at bringing people together. And then sometimes it's just literally like what I'm doing now. You just sit back, enjoy the glass you got in your hand, and watch people form friendships over what is essentially a hobby. That's really what it comes down to.
So I know you do events all around Australia, but what makes the Yarra Valley such a compelling destination for wine lovers and food enthusiasts? Where you really started, right?
I think the wine itself, what we focus on, what the Yarra focuses on and does really well, I say we, I don't really do anything except for my rosé obviously, is that the focus is on what grows well in the region and what does really well. And all the winemakers love Cabernet. No, I don't. It's very clear that I don't love young Cabernet, but they do because they know that the climate, the soil, everything that they've learned over history, really does well with Cabernet. And Chardonnay and Pinot obviously are much more popular and much easier to sell and to, maybe not easier to grow, but easier to sell. And we do that really, really well out there. We are close to the city, which is easy. We have transport to Lilydale now, and then there's, the Ubers, there's taxis, there's tours. There's a lot more. We're getting more restaurants, albeit some close, other ones open up. Accommodation is starting to improve. I think we could do accommodation better, and we could do that, which is one thing I learned recently, with my trip to the Hunter, accommodation and tourism. We could really focus more on that to bring more people out. We're pretty close together, the wineries. You don't have to go. And at Margaret River, you can be at the top in bus, and you got to drive 2 hours to get to Lorne and stuff. Everything's really far apart. So that's one thing the Yarra Valley has, and it's always been very food friendly. It's got that country town vibe. You go to Hillsville, you feel like you're in like a country practice. You feel like you're in a town.
Yeah, I had a friend he came over from London and loves his wines, amazing seller. And so I took him out there, but we did exactly that. We called the train out to Lilydale, got the Uber.
Yep.
We went to Oak Ridge,
yep.
Had lunch, did all the tasting there. Then we walked to Dominic Porte.
Yep, literally.
And then we walked to Yarra Yering. And then
that's a little bit further, but still a good work.
A little further, but it was like after lunch.
Yeah, you did.
So you can kind of do walking, although you don't see too many people walking.
No, but I think that the proximity of everything in that part of the Yarra, which on the valley floor, we'll say, is very, very good. But you can still go 35 minutes out to get to Gembrook Hill, which is almost in Pakenham. You can go to Steele's Creek, which is 30 minutes the other way, going up towards Yea. We're still spread, but there is the ability to do, like when I do a tour, for example, and take people out, I generally try and stay, unless they have a very specific request, I'll try and stay within that central area, or if I'm going up towards Steele's Creek, I will do the wineries that are up there, rather than, people don't want to go spend 45 minutes in a car, going from winery to winery. It's a waste of their time.
So tell us a bit about one of your events. What would it look like?
So the general events that I do now would be like the challenge series. I call them a challenge because people inherently love voting for something and voting for their favorites, right? So say we do Chardonnay, I'd pick 12 of what I would deem to be 12 of the top tier of Australian Chardonnays. I will put them in a lineup. Everybody will know what the 12 wines are, but nobody will know the order that they're coming in their brackets, in their 3 flights of 4. And so everyone will have the notes on all the wines. Everyone will have the ability to score out of 20. I like out of 20. I don't like out of 100. Personally, I like out of 20. And then I will correlate all the results at the end, and we will have what is technically a winner. But the way that I present what happens is I say that 1st to 12th, it's not like one is better than the other. It just means that group of patrons voted for that wine more than they voted for another one. And it's really interesting that, I did the Chardonnay in 5 states and not one Chardonnay won every one. There was a varying different aspect. In Sydney, it was hot, we were outside. The crisp, sharp, Great Southern Chardonnay comes and takes top. Melbourne, it's colder, a bit more warmer, so there's richer, rounder style comes to the top. Perth, they're parochial towards Margaret River. They're not voting for anything. I knew Margaret River was going to win, and I basically proved it in my own head that no matter where I served the Margaret River wines, they perform well. I proved that serving the best wines at the start will impact the scoring. So if you were doing an event where you technically had 4 Grand Cru Burgundies, and in the middle bracket was Premier Cru Burgundies, and the first bracket was Village, the Village will score lowest because it's first, right? If you switch it up and put the Grand Crus at the start, they still score lower because people are more apprehensive at the start. So I never put the same wines in the same order. I always will announce the top 6 for points if I do like an article, but I won't put the bottom 6 in order because it doesn't help any of the wineries, because when you're saying you're in the top 12, what is considered the top 12, let's say, it's not about being the best, it's just about letting other people experience. The Sydney guys have never drunk Chardonnay from Great Southern. The Perth people haven't had Macedon Chardonnay, right? The Brisbane people haven't had Beechworth Chardonnay. So it's about showcasing more wine to more people to open their horizon, because people vote a 10 out of 20, right? And you're like, what was wrong with the wine? They're like, nothing, I didn't like it. So then it's about educating and going, just because you don't like something doesn't mean, like I reviewed the Clona Killer Shiraz Viognier recently, the new release. Shout out to Tim and the team. Did not like the wine for my palate, for my taste and style of wine. But the wine is flawless. The wine is absolutely technically and structurally perfect. Okay, like acid, tannin, fruit, oak, everything is so harmonious and so well made. I just don't like it. But when I score everything, which I do myself for my own reference point and benchmarking, it scores extremely well, but I still don't like it. And that's okay. But most people can't differentiate between what they don't like and what is a bad wine or a faulty wine. If a wine's faulty and someone gave it a 10, great, understand. But it's because you don't like something doesn't mean that it should be pointed down. So there is like a little bit of educational aspect to what I do, but more about putting people together. That's really my whole mission.
Just a shout out on the Clona Killer. I'm currently drinking the 209, and it's just...
Oh, they're stunning. Stunning wines. It's just not my style of wine. Now, someone will blind me one that's 20 years old, and I'll say it's the best Shiraz I've ever had, right? And then they'll be like, it's Clona Killer, right? Which is the beauty of it, because my not love for young Cabernet is very well known. But give me a 30-year-old Bordeaux, and I'm like weak at the knees, right? Like that's just... It's probably because it's Merlot, maybe. It's not just Cabernet. So people should be allowed, and people should be not keyboard warriored for saying they don't like something. You know, like I try lots of wines. Like, I mean, I don't even know how many thousands I've done now, notes I've got. Like, I wouldn't even know. Like, I would love to know. It would have been a great idea to keep some form of record.
Well, I guess if you said that you loved everything, then you'd lose your kind of credibility.
Well, you lose it, and you lose the ability to, when you do say something is exceptional, it doesn't carry the same level of weight that it could carry if, you know, everything you drink is just, and you put in your glass and you put on social media is the greatest wine you've ever drunk, because it's not possible.
So looking ahead, what exciting developments and experiences or additions can customers look forward to over the next 12 months?
I mean, the events, I really want to step up the events. I want to bring more of that experience / education together, and, you know, and have verticals and deep dives on, you know, some of the more famed wines, whether they're from Australia or overseas. Tours, I'm really focused on tours of the Yarra Valley at the moment. And a lot of people don't know that I actually do them, you know, which I think is probably bad on me to actually get that out there, because it's quite easy for me to do a tour in the Yarra because I live there too. It gets me more tastings with the wineries, you know, it helps the region, you know, that is one thing that I've really focused on. And I've done a little bit of emceeing and festival work and hosted some bigger masterclasses and some bigger events like the Hunter Valley Wine and Beer Festivals, like 2,500 people, like trying to get my name out there to more. I'm doing the Comedy in the Vines with Merrick Watts coming up in October, which will be huge. It's like a kid-free event. Like I was like, when I get tickets, I'm like, I'll get wife and the kids in there. Like, no kids, mate. And I'm like, oh, brilliant. Like, in a way, that's what I'm the most looking forward to.
So one thing that's become really clear during this conversation is that the wine animal isn't simply about wine tourism or selling wine online. It's about creating connections between people, places, producers, and memorable experiences. But before we finish, we like to wrap up each episode with what I call Glass Half Full. It's a quick fire round, some questions, short answers, no overthinking. It's just the first thing that comes to mind.
Love it.
Love it?
Love it.
First wine that made you fall in love with wine?
Stag's Leap Artemis in San Francisco.
Red, white, or sparkling?
White.
Favourite Yarra Valley variety?
Chardonnay.
Best place for fine dining in Yarra Valley?
Probably Levantine Hill.
Favourite wine region outside Australia?
Burgundy.
Long lunch or cellar door hopping?
Long lunch.
A bottle currently sitting in your cellar that you're excited to open?
The Xanadu Reserve Chardonnay from 2023.
One wine you'd happily drink every day.
Raveneau.
Favourite food and wine pairing?
Crook and oysters, like literally filling up the oyster shell with crook.
Simple but effective. Dream wine travel destination still on the bucket list?
Burgundy.
What's always in your fridge at home?
Chardonnay. Lots of Chardonnay.
And finally, what's your favourite actual animal?
The flamingo.
Flamingo. I didn't see that coming.
Well, I mean, I have tattoos of tigers and I have all sorts of weird tattoos, thanks to my younger years. But if I had to pick an animal, it would be a flamingo.
Thanks, Brenden, aka The Wine Animal, for joining us and sharing your story. If you'd like to learn more, sure, check him out online, book an experience, or browse through their carefully created wine selection. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me.
And a special thanks goes to you, our listeners. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share with your family, friends, and fellow wine lovers. And don't forget to visit our website for exclusive offers and the special wine tastings at Leroy in Bay Street, Brighton, for those you'll not want to miss. And as always, a big thank you to Prue, Mark and Pierre for making this podcast possible, and an acknowledgement to the traditional custodians, the land of the Wurundjeri people, where this podcast is produced. So until next time, stay curious, drink well, and keep your glass half full. Cheers!